Okay, folks and friends, it's hot right now. It's really, really hot where I live, right? And I'm in Europe. I'm in Central/Western Europe. Vienna, Austria. It's actually due, I believe, to aesthetic reasons, illegal to hang an air conditioning unit out of your window here. They've got these beautiful Altbau windings with these very old, very exquisite and elegant facades, and they don't want you ruining the aesthetic. It's also the case, if I may, that one could argue Europe's deodorant game is just a little bit behind America's. Now, I know you Europeans think that we Americans are too trimmed and sanitized with our nose hairs clipped and our lipstick always bright in the morning and our smiles like this and our blowout hair completely clean. And all of that is true. We are way too anal retentive about appearance and hygiene. In America, I would agree to that, but we're in a heat crisis right now in Europe. And every once in a while, I'll be walking down the street or I'll get on the bus and a scent, a human body odor scent will hit me like the scent took shape in space and time and it became so dense. It's like a plank of wood, a plywood, and I'll be walking down the street and it's like it'll smack me right in the face. It's so strong. As you can tell, this heat is getting in my head. It's that kind of heat where, don't have air conditioning in the apartment and you open the windows and it's like somebody's blasting a furnace right into the window, and so you shut the window and you lock the window and you lock all the windows in the whole apartment, and then it starts to get stuffy and hot and stinky like your apartment is the inside of a teenage boy's athletic shoe after the teenage boy has been doing athletic things in that athletic shoe. You cannot escape the heat. And all of this has got me thinking about global warming, and has pushed me into the direction of wondering about Zen people and Zen practice, and a common complaint over centuries, actually, that people, Westerners, have had about Buddhism, that it's a quietistic or nihilistic religion. So I want to unpack this notion a little bit today. Is Zen nihilistic? So first of all, what do I mean by nihilism? Well, in my experience, being around sometimes very experienced and serious Zen practitioners working solely within, let's say, the Rinzai tradition, which is my tradition, they don't really care about certain, we call them human world problems or issues, right? Like, these guys know exactly how to fold their zagu, right? They know exactly the right knot for their Osho belt, okay? They know within a few millimeters how to position their thumbs when they're holding their mudra at their hara or their breathing center. But generally speaking, they don't give a damn about racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia. They don't care about politics. They don't really give a dang about Trump or Biden. They don't care about the Catholic Church, the Protestant Church. They don't care about Islam. And they don't really care about the climate problem, global warming, right? Now, I'm being a little bit provocative here, but it's kind of the case. If you bring an issue a lot of times to Zen people that's on everybody else's mind, maybe they sit back, maybe they listen to you, maybe they have half a smile on your face. I mean, I've noticed this with myself sometimes. I had a friend who was having a like severe climate anxiety, and he was almost ready to freak out and move his family somewhere cold and wet. And I must confess, I noticed myself adopting kind of a detached and slightly humored approach to his freak out, as though I was watching a kid having like a tantrum over some childish issue that I had some, bigger perspective on. And that feeling of being in the presence of an experienced Zen practitioner that they give off is that they have a bigger perspective on it, or there's something you're not quite catching if you or getting if you get tangled up in one of these very serious human world issues. So when I say that, when I ask the question, are Zen people nihilistic? Are Zen teachers, Zen masters nihilistic? Do they just not care about these issues? Are they so detached from their desires and their fears and their mental activity that they just don't give a dang anymore? Is that what I'm talking about here? And is that true? Okay, so in sum, I'm going to give away the answer here, which you already knew, I'm sure. No, Zen is not fundamentally a nihilistic practice. The teachings, practices, and principles of Zen and Buddhism are, in my experience and experience of many people, completely the opposite of nihilism. But I think in Zen, the spirit is you have to care about the world, but you have to care appropriately. If you become attached to an idea, a plan, or a point of view of any kind, suffering will arise. And no matter what you try and do, if you're driven by suffering, you're going to cause suffering and you're going to make the world a worse place. So I think, generally, the spirit in Zen, or the spirit of Zen, is suspicious of activism as a way of life, okay? And that means activism of any kind. The true spirit of Zen is suspicious of activism of any kind as a way of life. So my experience of living in a monastery and doing Zen is that the teachers, the tradition, offer principles and practices. And the principles and practices orient you towards the Dharma and how to live, right? And when you orient yourself correctly in how to live, things fall into place as they must, as they will, right? So we lived an extremely frugal life at the monastery. It was pretty much the antithesis of a materialistic existence. It was almost a commune. I mean, it was the most successful commune I have ever been exposed to. You had completely different types of people living together in a very structured and rigorous environment, all flowing together like one river towards a single beautiful common goal, okay? And I think part of that slightly wry smile that one finds on the lips of a Zen teacher when one comes crying to them with the tears of the world, poverty, global warming, war, all the problems that plague us in regular society. I think there's a part of the Zen teacher that's just like, back up 15, 20, 30, 80 steps. The problem is way back here, right? It's with how we're all living together. the choices we've decided to make as a society. We've decided to perpetuate, for example, illusion with the way we communicate through social media, through media conglomerates that are owned by corporations, that are profit-driven, that have very nefarious or selfish incentives behind how they deliver news and information. Okay, so we've got an illusion machine at the heart of our culture, right? We've got a greed machine at the heart of our culture. I mean, consumerism is a way of life. Sometimes I imagine that planet Earth is like an apple and it's suspended in the middle of nowhere, and human beings are just like ants, and they're eating the apple down to the core and defecating. They're eating the planet and we're leaving defecation behind. So we're massive consumers, right? And then we got war machines, right? Anger and rage is institutionalized in our military. So we've got the 3 poisons in Buddhism baked into our society: greed, anger, and delusion. So yeah, this teacher's gonna laugh. We're sitting on our cushions in a meditation hall trying to see these energies of greed, anger, and delusion arise within us, and we're trying to dissolve them and become perhaps a little bit more enlightened, a little bit more empty, a little bit less full of ourselves, right? So I've noticed this on people I respect in this tradition, a wise half smile. And believe me, the other half of the mouth in that half smile is downturned and is sad and is crying with the human society. There's a wise detachment from the kind of solutions that people come up with in society that just give rise to even more problems and more suffering. So I wouldn't call it coldness, I would call it wise, precise and insightful, as well as capacious detachment. Not nihilism. New backdrop, same old, annoying, high energy, high-pitched tone of voice. Friends, everything that I just said is what I think, feel, and believe, and want to go on record as saying. But to be totally honest, I never met a single solitary Zen practitioner who was all in, who didn't have a kind of annoying detachment, almost a slight hint, shall we say, of arrogance in at least some certain situations, like they were above it all. And this is the earlier you are in the practice, the more blatantly you display this kind of confidence in yourself as a spiritual practitioner. And you know, it's great on the one hand. It's like a children's story, a little golden book. Like you're a little choo-choo train that could never find your railroad tracks. And then one day you met a teacher and he led you to your railroad tracks, and that was your practice. And now you're on your way, choo-choo, and you're chugging along. And oh, there's the global warming protesters, whatever. Oh, there's the anti-racism people. Sure, you know, because you're on your path. I mean, that is kind of something as Zen practitioners we have to be honest about, right? But I found myself recently really having to think about what a Zen practice, the Zen tradition now, especially in this day and age, and generally speaking, a spiritual life is for. And I had to really start thinking about this because my girlfriend is reading this guy, Robert Sapolsky, right? She read this book. She loved this book. I'll never read this book because she summarized every chapter for me. But basically, he's a neurologist, and you can see the subtitle of this book, Determined, is The Science of Life Without Free Will. So, it's kind of a book that in some of the conversations I was having with my girlfriend, this book was taking the juice out of some of my spiritual insights and energy, and I felt kind of deflated, and I got kind of angry. Like, there are people that, it's like the old new atheists used to do, right? They would come up with these very nice rhetorical judo moves that would put every spiritual perspective flat on its back on the mat, right? And it's kind of a little bit, at least as my girlfriend was arguing it, that's kind of what the Sapolsky guy does from the scientific point of view in this book. And so anyway, the point is, I had to really think about what the heck the point of a spiritual practice is. If you can really understand the mind through neurology, and we're just going to get better and better and better at understanding what's going on inside of us through science, then what the heck's the point of sitting on a cushion? What the heck is the point of a spiritual tradition like Zen, which I've devoted a huge portion of my life to? So something came to me. I was laying in bed late at night, and I thought about when I was in the hospital with my Zen Buddhist teacher when he was dying. Okay, so he had all this stuff going on. One of his lungs was just starting to stop work. It was starting to stop working, and the pulmonologist would come in and he'd explain it to us, and he'd show us I don't know what we were looking at. I remember a picture of his lungs, and the pulmonologist is explaining all this. And the pulmonologist leaves. And then Roshi's main doctor would come in, and he's explaining what all the different parts of all the different tests mean. And then he says, but let's talk to the cardiologist. He leaves. The cardiologist comes in. The cardiologist explains what's going on in Roshi's heart. There were a series of doctors that came in. I mean, the throat doctor, because he had aspiration pneumonia. He couldn't swallow anymore. It was doctor after doctor after doctor was coming in to this hospital room where I was and the other attendant were sleeping and living in day and night during this week when my teacher was in the hospital. And there was a rotation of nurses and doctors explaining everything to us. Thank you, science. These were the Sapolskys of the world. These were the new atheists of the world. These were the scientists, the people with answers. And they had answers. And they came in the room and they gave them to us. And then there was a bit of a gap in their visits. And I thought, what's this all about? And then suddenly somebody new comes in one day. And she's a very young woman. I mean, she looked like she was about 18 years old. And I'm like, who is this person? And she's got a completely different vibe. And then a guy comes in and joins her. And he's like a soft, gentle, interesting guy. A nice vibe, and they're not really saying who the F they are. I know they're with the hospital. I'm like, who are these people? And keep in mind, we are in Cedars Sinai in Beverly Hills, adjacent a massive, like world famous, like up to date, professional medical complex. Okay, we are not, we're not with the Christian Scientists or something. Like we're at and it turns out. Finally, I figure out, these are the chaplains. And then it hits me. These are the people the medical professionals, the scientists send in when they have nothing left. That's what Zen is for. That's what Zen is for, okay? Like, I was realizing with the Sapolsky, you know, this guy is explaining everything. I don't know, I didn't read him, so I'm not gonna talk about it. But some of these neurologists and the scientists and these people that kind of poo-poo, you know, they kind of get condescending towards a meditation practice or spiritual traditions. I realized, for me anyways, they oftentimes don't have anything to say about death, right? They know how to talk about the electricity that's lighting up in the brain and the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex and the default mode network, and the human brain makes decisions 3.2 seconds before the human being actually consciously makes the decision, so we're all predetermined, blah, blah, blah. But the bottom line is we all wind up on those deathbeds, and all those clowns clear out of the room, and the chaplains come in, right? And it's been my experience that the really good Zen teachers that I've known, they've touched death, or it's touched them in some specific way. When it comes to issues like global warming, like the death of species on this planet, like the death of the coral reef, the slow possible extinction of the human race, or the evolution of the human race into some sort of different kind of species as our planet changes, as we make relationship with Mother Father Earth. And Mother Father Earth says, I'm getting tired. Stop taking things from me and pooping your carbon dioxide into the air. You know, generally speaking, whether it's the issue of being on your deathbed personally, or seeing something bigger happen in the planet around you, Zen is very good at that. But when it comes to specific activism, it really isn't a tradition that I think has a ton to offer there. It offers principles and practices for how to live, and it's way upstream of any activism that may ultimately, let's say, result from those principles and practices. So in sum, it's really hot, and I worry that the planet's getting hotter and hotter. You might be worrying about this sort of thing too, or maybe you think that that's libtard bullshit. God bless you. I hope you're right. I really do. Suffice it to say, the specter of death looms for all of us. Every species on this beautiful planet, and this beautiful planet itself, which I think is going to get swallowed up by the sun in 5 billion years. Or we're going to get pulled into an adjoining galaxy and eaten up by them, the Andromeda galaxy. Whatever the case, the prognosis for eternal life on planet Earth is not looking good. And rather than being a nihilistic practice or religion, if you want to call Buddhism that, Zen that, it is a tradition that is close to death. It's close to death. It's not afraid of it. It's right there. And we sit with death. And we die a little bit ourselves on the cushion. And our greed for the big new car dies. Oh, and we help save the environment there. Our lust for fame and attention dies, and we don't post so much online and overheat the servers somewhere, right? Our lust for money dies, and we don't participate in the industries and the great big capital carousel that's spinning us all in this crazy death circle, right? That's the general spirit behind Zen. And like I said, I would just close by saying I think modes of activism, conservative or liberal or everything in between and around those versions of activism, those are all downstream, I think, from the really important main principles and practices that are the heart of Zen Buddhism. Thanks for listening, guys. If you want to support this channel, you can go to patreon.com/ShozanJackHobner. Listen up. I don't know what's going on, but don't do the Patreon app through Apple. Just go to patreon.com/ShozanJackHobner if you want to support this channel, because Apple is now going to take 30% of everybody's Patreon donation. It's oh God, you know what? Like, really? So don't go through Apple. Just go to patreon.com/ShozanJackHobner directly, and if you would like to, you can support this channel there. I am so happy and honored and humbled to be able to just give you these thoughts on Zen. So I offer this channel for free, but if you want to support this operation, you can do so at patreon.com/ShozanJackHobner. There's also an opportunity to support this channel through PayPal, and there's a link to my PayPal page in the video description below. I'm going to go stick my head under the cold tap water of the bathroom and pass out. Ciao, beautiful people.